Okay, so let's go. The first and the most important thing is why the project is started. We start from the need assessment, the reason for the project. Why do we actually want the project to happen? Why we want the project to occur? So the need assessment tells us that. Then once the need assessment is done, then through need assessment we made business case. Business case, business case has all these things: net present value, return on investment, internal rate of return, payback period, scoring model, all those things. So with the help of this business case, we define what are the options and we select one of the option. Once the business case is ready, from the business case, we made benefit management plan and we see what are the benefits that a project can obtain, how you can obtain the benefit of the project, what benefits help the organization. So once the business case and benefit management plan is ready and we select one option, then once that option is selected, we make the project charter. And project once the project charter is approved, we communicate it to the stakeholders and we make stakeholder register. Now, if we are working in an agile environment, the project charter is of more of a one page or even less than one page. But if you are working in a non-agile environment, the charter can be bigger as you want. So this thing is clear to you so far.
Yes.
This thing is okay. So we
Yes.
have
Yes.
business case, benefit management plan through these things, and then we make project charter. So we have a project charter at our hand. Okay. So once the project charter is made, most of the time, stakeholders must be mentioned inside the project charter. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the major stakeholders? So we go to those stakeholders, we see, we talk to them, we communicate them, we go to a brainstorming. And as a result, we make a stakeholder register where we have a power interest matrix which rate the stakeholders having more power, more interest, and so on. So once the stakeholder register is ready, now we are ready to move to the next phase. Stakeholder register is very important because it has power, interest of stakeholders. It has the client engagement level and the desired engagement level of stakeholders. And if you take it from me, managing stakeholder is simply the most important thing that you do in the project. If you can manage your stakeholder perfectly, you can achieve your project success in a very well fashioned manner. So is this clear so far? Imran, Mustafa, Palisa,
Yes, Samir.
Zafar,
Okay.
Yes, yes, clear.
Zafar, Chitra.
Yes, clear.
Okay, good. So once the stakeholder register is ready, now comes the most important thing. Now we see which methodology to follow. Are we going to follow the predictive methodology or we are going to follow the agile methodology? Let's focus for some time on the agile methodology. If there is an agile methodology, the first thing is that we made a vision. So what is a vision? How we are going to make something? So vision is made there. Once the vision is there, to the vision or the project goal, we make product roadmap. Product roadmap is nothing but a high level plan that when and what this thing will be happening, how these things will be defining. All those things are being defined in the product roadmap. Through product roadmap is a combination of different releases. Like most of the time, we have 2 or 3 or 4 release. Let's say the project is of 1 year, then we say we have 2 releases, 3 releases, or 4 releases accordingly. And release is a combination of iteration and sprint. And sprint is a combination of daily stand-up. So the lowest level of collaboration is daily stand-up, then iteration, then release, and the roadmap. And the purpose of a sprint is basically to give minimum viable product to the customer. So far, everything is clear to everyone?
Also incremental, right? Not only
Yeah, incremental. No, iteration, sprint is basically the name is used as sprint or iteration. The delivery we provide is, of course, incremental delivery. We are providing minimum viable product and we are adding it. Okay. So how in Agile we do the things? We have basically this structure in which we start with the sprint planning. Okay. Then we go with the daily stand-up, then sprint review, then sprint retrospective. So let's focus on sprint planning. That is the first phase of a sprint, I would say. Even before sprint planning, we go and develop the product backlog. How product backlog is made? Product backlog is a combination of user stories. User stories is nothing, it is just saying from a user perspective. User stories are requirement from the user perspective. For example, as a user, I want this so that I can do that. So you have the definition of user, you have what do you want, your requirement, and how do you know that something is done. User stories are written on card, and we say the 3C. The card have confirmation, that is definition of done, and the conversation, this conversation. So you get all the user stories, and combination of all the user stories, you have a product backlog. So once again, what is product backlog? Product backlog is basically nothing but a combination of all user stories that combines all the product roadmap, or that is how each and everything must be done. So product backlog is clear so far?
So you create product backlog during the program increment, right? That is
We are talking about the in the first time, when we are starting in the first time. At that time, we are not having a product increment.
not
Product increment
program PI plan.
yeah, no, we are not going at program level. We are not going at program level, Chitra. Okay, let's not go there. Let's not go there. Okay. Okay. So we have product backlog. As a start, we are making a product backlog. Once the product backlog is made, we have all the user stories. Now the question comes, how do we prioritize the user stories? The question comes, how do we prioritize the user story? Then we have this prioritization formula. I would say this is a formula. We must give high value, high risk item first. That is the number one important thing, that we need to give user minimum viable product. So we give high value, high risk item first. How do we prioritize? We have different techniques. We have Moscow, must have, should have, could have, would likely to have, but maybe next time. Then we have 100-point estimation. We have dot voting. We have Roman voting, in which we say agree, disagree, and this neutral. Then we have fist of 5. We have normal voting. We have multi-criteria, and we can make any matrix we like to have. So these are the prioritization technique through which we prioritize which user stories are high value, high risk item. High value, high risk items are prioritized, and then as a result, we have prioritized product backlog, or I can say groomed product backlog. Once product backlog is ready, now product, remember, in Scrum, we have three basically responsibility: product owner, Scrum master, and development team. This is the responsibility of a product owner to get all the requirement. So far, we don't have development team. This is the responsibility of a product owner, that he needs to get ready a prioritized product backlog. So once the product backlog is ready, the team comes with the Scrum master. And then we have a sprint planning meeting. We have a sprint planning meeting. In sprint planning meeting, here we calculate the effort, how much effort it will take to complete each user stories. So how do we calculate effort? We have estimation technique. Some of the estimation techniques utilized are ideal days, t-shirt sizing, planning poker, affinity estimating, wideband Delphi. And as a result of these estimation, we get story points. Story point is nothing but the effort required to complete all the user stories. Effort required to complete all the user stories. So the team decides the story point, and the team tells how much story point they can complete in one sprint, that is 1 to 4 week duration. Very important point to understand here. Duration of a sprint, once fixed, it remains fixed. Duration of the sprint, once fixed, it remains fixed throughout the project. It does not change. Okay, it does not change because we have fixed the duration of the. Okay, let's coming back to the point. So we have made the sprint backlog. We have made the sprint backlog. From estimation, here the team tells how much work we can complete in one sprint, and the duration of the sprint or iteration is 1 to 4 weeks. We fix that duration. So how many story points you can complete in one iteration is also known as velocity of the team. In the first iteration, the team is giving their estimated velocity. So once the iteration get finished, we will see how many story points they have completed, how many user stories they have completed, and that becomes the velocity of the team. Very important point to understand. At the end of the sprint, we have sprint review. We only present those user stories that have been 100% completed, because we are looking at the definition of done, that the 100% user story has been completed. The user story that is not completed 100% is not accepted by the customer, and it goes back to the product backlog, and it get reprioritized. Complete product backlog get reprioritized at every sprint review. In sprint review, we have customer, we have stakeholders, we have all the persons who can influence the value here. So coming back to the daily stand-up. Daily stand-up is a time box. 15 minutes normally happen at the same time with 3 questions. What you did yesterday, what you will do today, and is there any impediment or roadblock that can damage the project? So these questions can come in any type. How can I put impediment? But the purpose is only to discuss these 3 questions in daily stand-up so that we can understand. Now, the purpose of having daily stand-up is to communicate. We put high value on communication in Agile. Communication is simply the most important thing in Agile. That's why we even have one value: customer collaboration or contract negotiation, working software or comprehensive documentation. So individual and interaction over processes and tool. That's how we put so much value in communication. So communication is very important. So we have information radiator in Agile. What is information radiator? We put burn up, burn down, burn up, burn down graphs in the common area where we can see how we progressing, and we can also calculate the variance from there. We have risk burn up, risk burn down graphs. We have velocity graphs. All these graphs showing us our progress, and we put them in the form of graphs and known as information radiator. For example, this is an information radiator for my office, that this is showing 49 processes. So if anyone come and I give a training there, I can easily refer to this information radiator. So this is an information radiator. So burn up, burn down graphs are utilized, and in Agile, we try to have a team and we try to have a co-located team so that we can have osmotic communication. What is osmotic communication? Osmotic communication is that you listen passively. 2 person are talking and you overheard something. This basically help you in understanding and you can correct the person. So osmotic communication is very important. Then as we are building and we are using a hybrid methodology of Scrum or XP maybe, we try to do pair programming. Pair programming is very important. Then continuous integration, test driven development, refactoring. Refactoring is just like housekeeping. You are trying to make your code as simple as possible so that escape defect does not go to the customer, and you try to reduce your technical depth. Technical depth is just like the depth we have in our life. If we have to pay something, that is known as depth. So what is the technical depth? Technical depth means all the work you have to do for the customer, all the mistakes, all those things are come under technical depth. We control our progress through Kanban board and task board. The big difference between Kanban board and task board is that we have work in progress limit in Kanban board. It works on the pull system. Lean has some principles, 7 principles and 7 type of waste. But the basic thing in lean is that we try to remove the waste. We try to decrease the cycle time. And the tool that we utilize for that is value stream mapping. Value stream mapping. So Kanban board, task board, value stream, pair programming, test driven development, refactoring, escape defects, then technical depth. All these things are happening simultaneously, and we are progressing in daily stand-up, showing our progress. So once the sprint is completed, then we need to look at our progress. The development team needs to look at themselves, how they have done. So sprint retrospective combines of 5 steps: set the stage, gather data, and set the stage. We basically set the stage for the team so that team can understand each other. They can know what is the reason why we are here. The tool that is mostly utilized for set the stage is more like ESVP, Explorer. It's known as Explorer, Shopper, Vacationer, Prisoner. It defines the condition why you are here. Then gather data. We try to gather the data of the complete team to understand what is happening here. Then we generate insights. We utilize different tools and technique. We can use fishbone diagram, 5 wire, to understand what is happening, what happened good, what happened bad, then decide what to do. Here we set SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound, to understand and measure the next progress. Then we close the sprint. So in this way, we have covered the complete agile portion. So if the project is from agile, now you can solve all the things that are related to the agile environment. Okay, now if the project is predictive, now it comes the really interesting part. If your project is predictive, how you can manage in the project predictive environment? What are the things you need to check? The biggest thing about the predictive is that in predictive, we have fixed scope, cost, and time. The scope is fixed. I would even say that the scope becomes the religion of the project manager. So we have to make a project management plan. Project management plan is a mother of all plans. It contains all the plan in the project: scope management plan, schedule management plan, cost management plan, quality management plan, resource, communication, requirement, risk, procurement. All these plans are there. Then we have 3 baseline: scope baseline, cost baseline, time baseline. So in order to make a scope, in order to make a scope baseline, the purpose of planning is to actually make 3 baseline: scope baseline, cost baseline, and schedule baseline. So in order to make scope baseline, we go to the scope process. Okay, we go to the scope process and see how we can do that. If I can put it here, these are some of the process. Plan scope management, it will give us scope management plan and requirement management plan. Once we get scope management plan and requirement management plan, then we collect all the requirements to requirement management plan, and we get requirement traceability matrix, and we get requirement documentation. So once we have all the requirement at our hand, now we want to limit and we want to see which requirement to use and which requirement not to use. So for that, we go to define scope and we get project scope statement. You don't, in new PMP, you don't need to memorize this process, but you need to understand scope management plan is formed, requirement management plan. What is the purpose of requirement management plan? Requirement management plan basically make requirement documentation and requirement traceability matrix. So once requirement documentation, what is requirement documentation and what is requirement traceability matrix, you need to understand these things. So you make project scope statement. So project scope statement consists of all the scope that is in the project, what is included in the project, what is excluded in the project. So once the project scope statement is there, you have acceptable criteria, you have all those inclusion and exclusion from the project. Then you go to the create scope. Here you make work breakdown structure dictionary. And once you combine these 3 things, work breakdown structure dictionary, and project scope statement, you get your first baseline, scope baseline. So you now have fixed the scope baseline. It cannot be changed without formal change control procedure. In order to change it, you need to have a formal change control procedure. We don't like scope creep, that is adding the requirement in predictive environment. We have to go to proper change control procedure in order to add anything to it. So just going through some of the tools that is utilized here: expert judgment, data analysis. We use alternate analysis here. Then we have expert judgment, data analysis, data representation, brainstorming, nominal, context, prototype, product analysis, all these things, and then decomposition. So that's how you create your first baseline, that is scope baseline. Once scope baseline is ready, now we need to make schedule baseline. So let's make the schedule baseline and see what we need to do. The first thing you need to do, you need to have schedule management plan. Schedule management plans tell us what is your complete schedule, which model you are going to use, how this model is going to be utilized, what is the purpose of this model. So once schedule management plan is done, you utilize your project scope statement, because here we in WBS we have work packages. If you guys remember, in WBS the lowest portion was work package. So we divide the work package into smaller parts, into activity list, attribute list, and milestone list. Once we have these things, we have the activities. The smallest part in the project is known as activity. We sequence those activity by utilizing precedence diagramming method, leads and lag, all those finish to start, finish to finish, start to start. And as a result, we get project schedule network diagram. So once we have a diagram, we go for the estimation. We utilize analogous estimation, same estimation. If you have done the same thing in the past, you can utilize the same duration. Parametric, we use parameters, 3-point estimation, that is optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely. We have triangular 3-point estimation, triangular distribution, and we have beta distribution, which is optimistic, 4 most likely, pessimistic divided by 6. Then bottom up estimation, the most accurate estimation. Then we have the CN analysis, CN. As a result, we get duration estimate, that we get the duration, this duration for each activity. We get the duration for each activity. Then we make what are the basis of this estimation. Anyone can ask us, okay, you made this estimation, but what was the basis for which you made this estimation? So we get basis of estimation. So once that is done, then we need to make schedule baseline. We made schedule baseline, we get project schedule, project network diagrams, schedule data. We utilize many tools and technique, and we can, if we want to basically compress the schedule, we have crashing, that is adding the resources and basically reducing the schedule, or fast tracking, making activities parallel, and all those things. Then once the schedule is done, schedule baseline is done, we have the third baseline. The third baseline, the most important thing, the cost, how much money it is going to cost us. Now, you guys already know we need to make cost management plan. Once the cost management plan is there, we know what currency to use, what tolerance limit to use. Once that is done, we estimate the cost. Similarly, like estimated duration, we use almost the same thing, and we get cost estimate for each activity, how much it will cost for this activity. And once that is done, by utilizing funding limit reconciliation and cost aggregation, we get cost baseline and project funding requirement. Very important thing to understand here, we get cost of each activity, and we need to know what is the cost of that particular activity and how we are going to build that activity. We need to understand that the funding requirement is there, that each activity has a cost, and once that work is done, then we can release. Once 3 baselines are done, then the next and most important thing comes, which is the thing that can damage our baseline: risk. This is very important concept to understand. Most of the time people do baselines and they are happy. There is one thing that can destroy all your planning, and you need to identify it, you need to manage it, that is risk. So predictive pay a lot of importance attention here. In agile, we only have risk spike, we basically prioritize it and try to tackle it in the form of user story. But here in predictive, we basically go through a lot of work. First, we make risk management plan, in which we identify the need of the organization. Is the organization is risk averse, risk seeker, risk neutral? What is the appetite of the organization? Then according to that, once that is done, then we identify all the risk. Identification of all the risk is very important. The more risk you identify, the better it is for you. If you are unable to identify any risk, that risk can kill you. So identifying all the risk is very important. As your organization get better and better, you identify more and more risk. You get more and more risk. As a result, you get risk register. You get risk register and risk report. Risk register is the list of all the risk that you needed, and risk report is a weekly or a monthly report showing all the risk, each and everything. So you have expert judgment here, you have SWOT analysis here, you have all those techniques that are utilized to identify the risk. This is a very important thing. I would say this is the most important process, identifying all the risk. So once the risk is identified, we know that not all risks are same. So we go to the qualitative risk analysis. We rank the risk by probability and impact. We rank the risk, which risk is more important. We categorize technical risk, and as a result, we get high, medium, low risk. So qualitative risk is done. If the organization need, then we do quantitative risk assessment, those decision tree, Monte Carlo, expected monetary value, and here we get give a number to the risk. Once that is done, we are ready to tackle all the risk by making the risk response plan. So we work for the negative risk as well as for the positive risk. We have basically 4 strategies for the negative. We avoid the risk, we mitigate the risk, we transfer the risk, and similarly we have exploit, enhance, share for positive risk. Then we have active acceptance and passive acceptance, both for negative risk as well as positive risk. Acceptance is basically making a plan, contingency plan. If something happen, what to do? Plan A, or if that plan fail, you will follow the plan B. Then passive acceptance is just sitting and see that happens, we will see. Then we go to the next step. Then there another risk response, that is escalated. Now, escalate can come as the first strategy or the last strategy. So once risk plan is done, we need to know one thing: who is going to do the work? You need someone who is going to do the work. So you go with a resource. In plan resource management, you basically plan for all the resources. You make a team charter. Team charter, a very important document that tells us the values of the team, how the decision will be taken, how you are going to handle the conflict. Then resource management plan tells which resource you need and when they come. And then you estimate all the resources through same estimation techniques that we utilize in estimate duration and estimate cost. So once that is done, you are done with it. Now you need to know what quality standards you are going to follow. So for that, you make a quality management plan. You understand the cost of quality. You understand benchmarking. You understand what are the quality standard, and you made quality management plan, and you made quality matrices to ensure that the quality standards are being followed. So once that is done, you see, okay, now we have stakeholders, which we identified in the stakeholder register. We need to communicate with the stakeholder. So we make communication management plan. We make communication management plan to ensure all the communication needs the stakeholders are being fulfilled. It is very important to understand which technology to use, which technology is available. If you are communicating with the Chinese people, you cannot use WhatsApp. You need to use other software. What are the requirement of the project? What is the size of the project? Which method to use? Pull, push, interactive. What is a model of the communication? Sender receiver model. And as a result, you get communication management plan. Now, this communication management plan is actually telling us the needs of the stakeholders. As we have identified in the stakeholder register, as we identified in the stakeholder register, the current engagement level and what are all desired engagement level. Stakeholder engagement plans tells us all the strategy that we need to follow in order to convert the current engagement level into desired engagement level. So once all the plans are done, once all the planning is complete, now our project management plan is completed. Now we actually go to the execution base. Now we start working. The plan is done. So first thing, what we need to do once the plan is done and plan is approved, we need to get those resources. We need to get the team who is going to do the work. Now we decided which team to become. Maybe we can have virtual team, but deciding on the virtual team, it's very important to understand what are the issues you can have, what are the challenges in the virtual team, how are you going to do the pre-assignment, and how you are going to select the resource. So when the resource are selected, you basically follow the physical resource requirement. Very important thing to understand here is Tuckman ladder. The forming, norming, performing, that forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning stage. And understand that once you are developing the team, there will be conflict among the team. So you need to handle the conflict. Win-win situation is always the best situation, but sometimes you cannot get the win-win situation. So maybe you need to use smoothing or compromising. But even the most important thing for conflict management is to identifying the stage of conflict. Is this a stage that where you interrupt, or you let the team to solve their conflict by themselves. So that is very important. So here emotional intelligence really play a role. When you are giving award to a person, you are doing individual and team assessment, when you are going training, rewards, all these things, emotional intelligence, that is knowing yourself, knowing other person, managing your emotion, managing other person emotion becomes very important thing. If you cannot if you cannot monitor it, if you cannot control it, you cannot do any team management thing, because team is everything. Team is someone who is going to ensure that the work is being done. So once you are managing the team, you are managing the conflict, you know Maslow hierarchy of need, you know theory X, theory Y, you know why people are get motivated, what is expectance theory. Then you manage the stakeholder. Managing stakeholder is very important thing. Understanding what are the requirement which we already planned out, and ensuring that that is being done properly. And the communication, this process, this plan communication, a single process in which a complete communication of the process is being done. So as we are in the execution phase, we are working, we are actually producing deliverable. The real work is being perfumed, and the data at the lowest level is being perfumed. And if there is any issue between the teamwork, issue logs are being produced, all those things. And if you have planned procurement, if you want to make or buy something, which we discussed in the procurement thing, which we discussed, if we want to buy something and we have a source selection criteria, we have an agreement. There are different type of agreement, like fixed price contract, if the scope is clear, cost reimbursement, the scope is not clear. So once you are ready with the procurement, you make a procurement strategy, bidding documents, source selected. Here you actually conduct procurement. Here where sellers are actually selected, you write the agreements with them. So once sellers are selected, when the work is being done, knowledge and lesson are adjusted, is being done. So quality team ensure that the quality standards are being followed. All the deliverables that is being produced, they are being produced according to the quality standards. No deliverable is being produced that does not follow the quality standards. Meanwhile, you are doing monitoring and control to ensuring that all the changes are being followed in the proper way. Or if there is any kind of change, that must go through change control procedure. You are doing variance analysis, you are doing earned value analysis, you are ensuring that the earned value is proper, schedule variance, cost variance, it is done properly. And if there is any change request, the change request follows from perform integrated change control, where change control board is sitting, and you are ensuring all the procurement is done according to proper way, and you close the project in the best possible way. So in this way, we have actually covered the complete PMP process, and we have covered the predictive as well as agile portion. If you can actually master what we have just discussed, the probability of you clearing the exam increases